Hey there, I'm Chappie, and this is Sketching Out Lorcana. At the start of Walt Disney's Sleeping Beauty, the viewer is introduced to a world fit for storybooks and fairy tales. We open to Aurora's celebration holiday, an entire kingdom and friends coming together to bring joy and praise for the birth of the awaited princess. This includes the three good fairies, Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather. These fairies bestow gifts upon the infant princess. This is our introduction into knowing the fantastic and cements the world into fiction. From a first watcher's perspective, this is what the viewer can expect from this world's depiction of the Fae. Short, joyful, round ladies with dainty wands, flowing, colorful dresses, with capes and brimmed pointed hats. And then, as Merryweather starts to bestow her gift upon Aurora, we're hit with an interruptive whammy. A large gust throws off her gift giving groove, and a clash of lightning follows, subsiding to greet an unwelcome guest. Maleficent, the dark fairy, enters the fray, absolutely peeved that she was not invited with the rest of the kingdom to celebrate the birth of Aurora. She's tall, pointed, dressed from head to toe in black and purple, a large staff adorned with her beloved pet crow, and two mirrored horns give the illusion of a demonic crown. This is the mistress of all evil. And like I said before, she's also a fairy. This might throw the initial viewer for a loop, but the creators at Disney thought ahead when creating these characters. See, when lined up with the other fairies, you start to see how starkly different Maleficent is when compared to the three good fairies. Her design is purposefully different, but it's also greatly emphasized to be put at odds with the other fairies. Her stark differences are on purpose. And now, we come to today's topic, emphasis. It's something used within the art realm to truly elevate the importance or relevancy of some matters, and it's no stranger to the world of Disney animation. So, how does it fare in Disney Lorcana? Well, you bet that I'm going to run my freaking mouth about it and tell you about it in this week's chapter of Sketching Out Lorcana. I'm going to say something to you guys in two different ways. Are you ready? Here goes. I didn't say they'd never add Sword to Lorcana. Now let me say it again. I didn't say they'd never add Sword to Lorcana. You see what I did there? I said the same exact statement twice, just like I told you I would. It's kind of funny how I followed through with that, but that wasn't funny at all. I'm just giving an example. I don't know why I wrote that. Uh, my first version of the statement sounds like, I'm just spouting something out. I'm literally just giving you a factoid that I never said that. But with the second statement, the extra little load I put into the beginning, it makes it have a little accusatory air. There's a difference to it. I put emphasis on the fact that I didn't say Sora would never be in Lorcana, and the emphasis suggested that someone else suggested the matter. Like I'm pointing fingers, but who am I pointing the finger at? Who made the suggestion? Was it Ryan Miller, one of the boys that made Sketching Out Lorcana? Was it Tetsuya Nomura, boy that made Sora? Or was it Walt Disney, a little Missouri boy that made Mickey Mouse? Emphasis is when you give something some sort of value or important notice. When we place emphasis on something, we want others to take note of it and remember that specifically about what was said. It usually means that tidbit was the most important part and what we wanted remembered and received above all else. Let's take a look at a Disney matter to help demonstrate emphasis a bit more. I'm sure many of you have heard about the controversy surrounding the similarities between Disney's The Lion King and Kimba the White Lion, an anime from the 1960s based on the manga Jungle Emperor by Osamu Tezuka. For years and years, the internet has quietly feuded over whether Disney stole concepts and ideas from the manga and anime and placed them within The Lion King, to the point where people believe that the staff behind The Lion King plagiarized major story elements from Kimba the White Lion and applied it to the tale of Simba. While many have gone back and forth about the issue, I'm not here to deliberate on that. What I want to focus on is how the staff that worked on The Lion King have said in passing when asked about Kimba. Something along the lines of, oh yeah, a couple people that worked on Lion King liked Kimba, or yeah, Matthew Broderick knew that Kimba was a thing and watched it growing up. He thought he was auditioning for Kimba. Well, fun fact. Like, this had no effect on the movie. It's just like my statement earlier. They just said it in passing. Or if there was any inkling of inspiration, it was minimal. Not a full dismissal, but proof that they were aware there was an anime called Kimba the White Lion. All of this to say that when it came to the true inspirational beats for the story, the Lion King creative staff hit press excessively and repeatedly with how the inspiration for the Lion King was both closer to home with comparisons to Walt Disney's Bambi and had more epic inspirations from Shakespeare and the Bible. Let's take an example from the movie. Simba being visited by the ghost of Mufasa in the clouds was an allusion to Hamlet being visited by the ghost of his own father, or even God visiting Moses within the burning bush in the biblical book of Exodus. Disney emphasized the main inspiration for The Lion King with no shame, giving credence that they took inspiration for their story, just not from the likes of what they've been accused of. It wasn't to the point of plagiarism or anything like that. All of this to give a proper example of emphasis and practice by Disney themselves. I know what you're all thinking. You're all hearing me talk about this and yap, and you're like, Chappie, what the heck does this mumbo jumbo have to do with art and Lorcana? Why are you talking about? You just want an excuse to talk about Simba. Well, let me emphasize that you guys should put your dang patient pants on, because y'all know I yap about stupid examples and stuff before I give you how it applies to art. God, y'all need to be patient. So let's talk about that now. I'm so sorry. I'm not yelling at you guys, I promise. Emphasis in art helps us to keep focus on what's important within the art piece we're looking at. When it comes to a definition of emphasis given in art, emphasis in art is a principle which is applied to draw attention toward a certain part of the art itself. This can be achieved by all sorts of different practices or elements of the art. Since I took so long to explain that first example, let's jump into a card to give us an example right off the bat and explain emphasis in real time. Let's take this card from Rise of the Floodborn, The Legend of the Sword and the Stone. I don't really remember this song. I'm not going to be able to sing it this week. Sorry, fellas. Now, you notice a couple things right off the bat. Everything but Arthur and Excalibur are very monotone. Everything that isn't one of the two is set within shades or hues of white and gray. This is our first example of emphasis. The world is dulled around the object so that our eyes can focus in on what contrasts with the surroundings. This makes Arthur and Excalibur our focal points. A focal point is where the viewer's attention is purposefully drawn to within the art piece. Focal points are essential and go hand in hand with talk of emphasis. But let's take another step and focus on something else. Do you notice how Arthur's eyes are focused on the sword? This is yet another branch of emphasis. And on the topic of branches, do you notice these dark branches here in the foreground? Their color to still blend in with the surrounding world of monotone, but their direction draws invisible lines to Arthur and Excalibur, just as Arthur's eyes draw us to the sword. Let's move over to Emerald and look at yet another piece of emphasis, the Hidden Ink Caster, an item card and a super interesting one at that. Again, the world is saturated in all sorts of aquatic blues to help us know this is set within some sort of grotto or cove. The setting is monotone. So when we're introduced to a splash of gold, it takes us by surprise and hones our interest into this part of the piece. Not only that, but look at some of the aquatic mass around the ink caster swirling about it. Even though the color corresponds with the environment, the line work creates a circle that helps us to keep our attention toward the focal point yet again. And if you look at that, it kind of looks like it's making an X with the circle, like it's like a 1/X with the ink caster involved. Another wonderful example that uses both practices is Rajah, Royal Protector, from Ursula's Return. Here, we see Rajah being a vibrant splash of orange, bright whites and stark black within a monotone world of purples, blues, and even some green here and there. The eye's tricked into thinking the environment's all one color, when the colors are all so similar in pairing that they appear to be identical. Not only that, but a majority of Raja is framed by the door he's standing in front of. This framing is accompanied by the segments of stone, the lines of the stone, pointing toward his presence within the art. On top of all this, you see the palace guards drawn just with enough detail for their eyes to train on the loyal tiger, but just that little bit helps in the emphasis. Not only with their eyes drawing the invisible lines to Raja, but also their texture within the art. You can see every ounce of smug pride within Raja's stance and facial features, while we recognize the pure horror from the palace guards surrounding him. But the average person just glancing at this art can tell that more emphasis was put into the detail of Raja, rather than the surrounding guys intimidated by him. With that, we can look at how the art is composed within a piece and instantly connect the dots about what the focal point truly is. Your mind gazes at the subject, recognizes the detail put into the piece, and then draws the conclusion of the focal point from there. Remember Hans, 13th in line for my perspective video? He's a strong example of both this and the color aspect serving as emphasis. So let's get some fresh eyes on a new piece to explore this matter. Cinderella, Melody Weaver. This art is absolutely gorgeous. I remember when this card was revealed, I instantly told my wife, I was like, I'm going to make a deck around this wonderful card. So we can see how Cinderella has detail put into her presence within this art, with lines outlining her and all. We can see the shading and everything. But if you peer into the background, you can see how there are shapes for objects all throughout. There's bushes to the left and bushes to the right, a pathway reminiscent of a certain brick road leading to a wizard, and even the spires of a faraway town and castle further into the backdrop. If you look at all those objects strewn about, you'll notice that they're all detailed and you can make out what they are. But their detail is limited. It's kind of just blotches of colors and take the shape of these objects. Cinderella is fully rendered and realized and outlined within the piece, whereas everything else is plopped in with just enough detail to not detract from her. Keeping in the same vein and train of thought, we can look at Scar, fiery usurper, and make the same connections. Consumed by the flames of ambition, this Scar glimmer is absolutely the focal point of the piece. Yet again, we see everything surrounding the leaping villain with the faintest number of details to detract just a bit from their presence. Meanwhile, within the texture of Scar, you can see which parts of his mane transition to flame, and which aspects of his skin are detailed to embody magma. It's very important to me. Like, it's really important to me that you guys realize, and I want you guys to keep in mind, when I say these things, I am not bashing the detail put into these pieces of art. While this is yet another example of me emphasizing something, it's truly important to me that you know I'm not critiquing this in any way. I am praising the practice because it's absolutely purposeful. We see plumes of smoke and wisps of fire detailed with few brushstrokes masterfully, hitting the perfect balance of not detracting from the focal point, while also contrasting enough with the background so that we know what's going on. Another full wonderful example is an emerald card I've mentioned loving before, Kit Cloudkicker, Tough Guy. I want to bring up this card specifically after the point I made because this card is just the focal point. It's just Kit, the background, and the wisps of clouds surrounding him and interacting with him. Yet again, the texture and detail is different to the point that we can easily identify Kit as the subject of the piece. The clouds he's surfing through are distinct enough to keep a shape, yet different enough to not draw attention away from him. Not only that, but they're directly affected by his involvement within the piece. All to show that we have these grand, wonderful, awesome art pieces to grasp and awe at. But even the simple pieces can truly cement themselves as wonderful pieces with the purpose of an awesome hold on our minds. It's all purposeful. It's all there on purpose. I love it. Honestly, the craziest thing is that there's just so many that mix and match the stuff we've talked about and execute it all perfectly, to the point where I wanted to take this time at the end of the video and talk about examples that just knock it out of the park. Starting with the subject of our thumbnail, Jafar, Dreadnought. Bro, whoever approached Cam Kendall and said, okay, we need the big Cobra version of Jafar, but we need him to be a mech. Whoever made that call, thank you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. This art is just so genuinely cool, and that concept is just awesome. I want mech everybody. I think Jake Parker did a sketch of Mech Belle, and she was in a mech version of Beast. I want that. I need that. So let's delve into the emphasis. Yet again, the texture between Mecha Jafar, Mechafar, if you will, and the surroundings are distinct to the point that you can see different brush tools used on these little awnings and posts to contrast with the bold and vibrant brushes used on Jafar. It's also all monotone too, only broken by the sky and Jafar, but the sandy hues dwell so much into the sky past the horizon that it doesn't immediately register to the brain. And to top it all off, we have lines drawing our focus back to Jafar. There's the wisp of the lamp placed further in the foreground, retreating into the background to swirl around the Cobra mech. There's also the vase in the right foreground pointing towards him, as well as the post I mentioned before and the camel's entire body wandering away from him. All little sprinkles to bring your attention back to him. Let's go over to Field of Ice next, an item from Sapphire. I think the biggest thing to detract from this is just how purposeful the emphasis from the piece is. Here, we're given the silhouette of one of Disney's biggest and most beloved characters in recent times, overshadowed by the impeding stalagmites of ice seemingly poking out from the cart or trying to. Their detail is so fine and crisp compared to Elsa's silhouette in the back. Not only those crisp details, but also the motion of Elsa's hands out stretching and the magic leading towards the spikes help us cement the focus there. Tag along the fact that the darkest parts of the picture culminate within the spikes to differentiate them from the light background, and you have yet another perfect contrast to emphasize the ice field. What I want to do to finish off on, our examples is a high note, just like I did with the Training Grounds last piece with the perspective. I think a great culmination of all we've learned today rests within Ruby again. Ariel, Adventurous Collector, does so well to emphasize the focus on Ariel within the piece of art. Within a monotone ocean of submerged shipwrecks, we find Ariel and her buddy Flounder. Again, the detail within Ariel herself is glaring when compared to the rest of the piece. Her texture is so crisp and pristine, to the point where it makes Flounder, who's given, kind of the same treatment, he seems a bit washed out in comparison. But even with that slight blur, Flounder's super important to this piece. His eyes draw two lines, both in the same direction. They bring the attention back to Ariel's hair, but they also linger past her. And if you look at Ariel's hair, it curves into a line to point out the elephant in the room that Flounder's swimming away from, or rather, the shark within the room. And even with attention brought to the shark, it's still obscured with a blur, so that we know of its danger but don't lose focus on Ariel. And as we survey our focal point in Ariel even more, we realize that her entire body arches, almost as if to make an arrow towards the shark. Everything in this piece is telling us to look at the dang shark. Even the blurred edges of teeth segmented and leading towards its open maw. It's all telling us to look. The only things that don't tell us to look are the shipwrecks in the background. That's only one of the shipwrecks. The other shipwreck collides with the shark. Probably the most compelling part of the piece is that while all red flags point at the predator behind Ariel, one red flag being her literal red hair, it's the determination drawn into her face that tells us everything's okay. That she's not worried about some big guppy, while everything including our focal point leads our sight everywhere else. It leads us to focus on the shark, flounder, Ariel's hair, the ship under the shark's teeth. Everything is telling us to look at the shark. Ariel's focus lies literally in the opposite direction of the danger. It leads forward, giving us an air of hope for what's to come. Her attention is so drawn away from the shark, it's the opposite, and as our focal point, that's where we want to direct our attention. This piece is truly magnificent, to the point where I for sure thought Ariel was going to get her enchanted card back with an Into the Inkland set. It's such a great piece, and the art really emphasizes not only the importance of her in the piece, but it also emphasizes the bravery and courage within her character. And that's just one of the multitude of reasons why Lorcana's art is just so dang compelling, why it's so wonderful. We get to see these characters that we've loved anywhere between a couple of years to nearly a century come to life in new ways, and yet still keep the identity of those characters we adore. Lorcana's art is just so dang great at capturing all of that, and I can't wait to explore more with you guys. I'm just going to take a note off of my... I don't know if I've told you guys, I've scripted all of these. I want to take a moment away from my script to tell you guys, thank you for listening to me. Thank you for listening to me yap and be stupid and yell about stupid stuff every couple of weeks. I'm so glad you guys are enjoying it. I enjoy making these so dang much. These are a highlight for me, and I look forward to everyone I have to put together and edit and make for you guys. It truly is just something I'm super passionate about, and I'm so happy y'all are liking them. But in the meantime, until we get to the next one, I hope you guys keep on questioning. I'll see y'all real soon.